America is rich in natural resources that have provided us with great wealth and a good way of life. Our natural resources are things of great value that were here long before we came into being. We will see how these riches can be of lasting benefit. For example, our living forests, mineral wealth in rocks and metals, petroleum and natural gas, and our waters that nourish the soil and support life itself. Trees are the oldest living things. In the groves of giant sequoias are sturdy old trees that have been growing for several thousand years. One of the first things the early settlers made use of was the timber. In colonial times, virgin forests covered most of the land. The settlers needed timber for homes and barns, and needed to clear the land quickly for space to grow crops. This wood from the native forests was of lasting value. We can still see old houses, bridges, and mills that were built from 100 to 200 years ago. Supplies of wood are always needed, so we are harvesting trees not only for lumber, but also for plywood and paper, and for the many byproducts of wood. The underground wealth of our nation is not visible like the forests. For example, many of our western lands look barren, but are rich in minerals like gold, silver, copper, and lead. A copper mine is an example of how the underground is obtained. The bodies of ore are reached by stripping away the surface earth and also by tunneling underground. The ore is crushed at a mill. Then, through a series of electrochemical processes, is transformed into sheets of copper. The resulting metal makes millions of miles of wires and cables and goes into hundreds of products, from telephones to television sets. Another desert region yields limestone rock that is the main component of cement. The quarrying requires heavy equipment and transportation and milling. The products result in such things as sidewalks and silos, buildings and highways, grain elevators and concrete pipe, and bases for bridges. Building stone is obtained from a number of our states. For example, the quarries in Indiana have furnished limestone for many years. Cut into many shapes and sizes, you see them in the walls of houses and large public buildings. Iron ore, the basic material for the steel industry, is one of our most valuable minerals. A constant stream of ships bring the raw ores down the Great Lakes from northern mines. Trains also bring iron, coal, limestone, and other ingredients of steel making to mills located in many of our states. In the furnaces, the ores are converted into the hard metal, steel, to be rolled into many shapes for thousands of products. We have many rare minerals too. From a mine in Arkansas, bauxite is being obtained. It is processed into alumina in powder form, then to the aluminum metal, which goes into airplanes and houses, and many new products coming into daily use. Uranium, the mineral from which atomic power can be made for industry as well as bombs, is being mined in numerous places. A typical source is Haystack Mountain in New Mexico, where this valuable ore has been found in large quantities. Who can tell what future mineral wealth is still to be unearthed? About 100 years ago, a California prospector found oil seeping from the ground and collecting in a large natural pool. He scooped up a sample and sold it to a nearby mission to be used for healing oil and to burn in lamps. This was at the time of the gold rush, and the prospector did not realize that the ultimate riches of oil would far exceed all the gold ever taken from the western mines. Now the oil producers are drilling as deep as 5 miles into the earth and bringing up the petroleum which formed in hidden pockets in the strata of age-old rock and sand. Today, production is largest in Texas, California, Louisiana, and Oklahoma, but also is important in the Pennsylvania hills, on the plains of the Dakotas, Wyoming, and Montana, and even in the wheat fields of Kansas. Petroleum, along with natural gas, is now the leading natural resource in the total value of its products. Our way of life has been greatly changed by this resource of oil because it is the fuel for most of our modern transportation. In addition, petroleum science is creating an increasing number of new chemical products besides oil and gasoline. Snow-covered mountain peaks are the source of much of that most valuable resource, water. Trickling down from the melting snows, a stream winds its way toward the sea. The stream becomes a river. It may become a great river of navigation and commerce. Some rivers are used as sites for giant dams, where the water drops through pipes to revolve turbines and create power in electric generators. Much of this same water is turned into irrigation canals and gives life to former wasteland where fabulous crops are now grown. While using the products from such resources, it is well to consider how we can assure future supplies of timber, minerals, and water. True conservation does not mean locking up our natural resources. It means wise use and replenishment for maximum human benefits. We can assure future supplies of wood by the kind of forest management which keeps timber always growing for later uses. One way is to select and harvest individual trees that have reached their most useful size and value, leaving younger trees to mature. Another way is, when cutting entire areas of trees, to leave blocks of standing trees to reseed the cut-over lands. In some places, large areas of wooded land are being set aside as tree farms for harvesting at future times when the trees will be of greater value. Adequate and constant fire prevention is most important in forest management. In many places, groups of young people are assisting government and lumber company foresters in replanting barren or fire-swept areas. We can assure future mineral supplies by constant exploration for new sources and by efficient production methods. The search for oil is never-ending. Petroleum geologists with the latest scientific equipment are exploring all possible areas. Sometimes a device towed by airplane charts the magnetic field over large areas. Then, with other equipment, the oil-bearing strata are located. In the mining industry also, modern processing is designed to extract the greatest possible amount of metal from the ore that is mined. We can conserve water resources by protecting them at the source and providing for storage. Safeguarding the supply and purity of our waters begins in the woods, where we need to preserve the ground litter to help retain the water. In protecting our lakes, forests, and rivers, we are also fostering one of the finest byproducts of such natural resources, the enjoyment of beauty, recreation, and sports. The havens for wildlife are also perpetual joys to mankind.